I mean, I want to get straight to the point, especially around the step-aside decision. Is it in effect, and does it force the SGS Magashule to leave his position?
Good morning and morning to your viewers. The President of the African National Congress, when he closed the National Executive Committee meeting yesterday, read out a statement of the NEC, and on step aside effectively stated that there is a 30-day period that had been agreed upon to allow the Secretary General's office to consolidate a list of those of our cadres who could be affected so that they are notified of the decision of the National Executive Committee. This is in line with the decision of the National Conference. It is important that we do not locate or personalize the issue of step aside to the Secretary General. Of course, the National Executive Committee did observe and appreciate the fact that one of its leading figures is affected by that kind of a process, and appreciated the initiative taken by the Secretary General to seek counsel from former leaders of the African National Congress. So the 30-day period would then allow for that, so that the ultimate action are ones that ultimately unite the rest of our organization. The National Executive Committee did urge our structures throughout the country that none must be engaged in activities that seek to undermine decisions of the National Executive Committee or sponsor divisions in that way. So we are aware that these are difficult and challenging times, and are doing everything else we can to make sure that in how we handle the situation, the ANC's integrity and standing continues to reign supreme. There is also an initiative undertaken by provincial structures of the African National Congress to be able to engage with the national officials and make sure that there is a fuller understanding on the extent and terms under which the whole step-aside guidelines are to be undertaken, so that in their own execution there is consistency and uniformity.
If members of the ANC do not respect the decision of the NEC, as you mentioned, Mr. Mabe, what's next? Is a suspension the next step?
Well, the statement of the National Executive Committee is quite clear in terms of the next steps that ought to happen after the 30-day period, including activating the Rule 25 of the ANC Constitution, which effectively talks about issues of discipline. So parameters have been clearly outlined in terms of what there needs to be undertaken during this period of time.
I want to move then to the issue around the judiciary, which is another issue that the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has made mention to. I mean, the NEC was unequivocally in support for the judiciary as well as the State Capture Commission. What is then the ANC's decision upon former President Jacob Zuma's views, particularly on the judiciary, but not only that, when we're also seeing his reluctance to appear before the Zondo Commission?
Well, the African National Congress will not necessarily have a specific decision on its former president. Safe to say that the African National Congress has once more reiterated its support for the Judicial Commission into state capture, and again urged all of its members who are invited to appear before such commissions to honor those kind of invitations. It is important that it is understood well within that context that the ANC supports the judiciary and its independence, and believe that institutions set up like the Zondo Commission are necessary instruments to be able to deal with whatever issues that might have happened in the state, and accord everyone an opportunity to be able to go out there and air their side of the story. We've also urged our own members to desist from attacking the judiciary and instead use appropriate platforms to be able to ventilate and raise on all their concerns where such could exist.
While we're talking about some of the points mentioned by the ANC president, the ANC also spoke out strongly against factions, namely the RET forces. We know that the MKMVA as well as the MK National Council as well, and then also factions being part of the ANC seems for years now. One can argue that even the so-called CR17 was a faction, Mr. Mabe. What's the plan then for rooting them out altogether and to really implement the unity that is in theory?
Well, we have actually urged all our members to desist from any form of factional conduct, not to use party regalia or party platforms to be seen canvassing for notions that would otherwise lead to divisions in the movement. We have said that the ANC has got sufficient organizational platforms to accord each and every member the space to air their own issues. We had said that we do not have a structure of the African National Congress called RET. Instead, at our own national conference, we had agreed on a resolution of a radical socio-economic transformation and had said that we must continue to submit to the execution of resolutions as the entirety of the leadership of the African National Congress and not as a certain section that believes that it could be having ownership on the resolutions of the African National Congress. We had said that the ANC must effectively take its leadership role in the organization and be able to champion and direct the programs that all of its members are supposed to be submitting to. And these are programs that must be seen both in action and in deeds to be uniting the entirety of our membership.